Well, welcome to our 8th episode of Tomorrow Talk. It has been a while since we last did a Tomorrow Talk. I think it's been almost, I don't know, I think we're going on a month. This Tomorrow Talk is going to be a little different from our previous Tomorrow Talks, as we will just be having a general conversation about fantasy, sci-fi, and then eventually we'll get into a little bit about our tabletops. My co-host here, Cersei, is with me, as well as our guests, who are also our players in our tabletop, Tonili, Rosemay, and then Varelis, who we know as Lies, will be joining us a little bit later. He did send me a DM, so he'll be accompanying us in conversation. As you can see in the background, you probably see on the screen, just the scene of the embassy area of Mass Effect is showing up. It's just I needed something for the background for this discussion. And then we will have a little news on our Star Wars pen and paper, and we will be introducing a little bit of our new project coming up. And I will also be having Cersei talk about our Daggerheart world, going over some lore, and then if any of our players have any questions, she'll be glad to answer those. And then I will be going over just the general synopsis of what Mass Effect's like, because a lot of our players have not played Mass Effect, or haven't played Mass Effect enough to know anything about Mass Effect. So, and that actually will be our segue into our new project. With that said, I guess I have I'll start it off with a general question, and then Cersei can kind of pose some questions of her own to kind of spur conversation. But my first question to everybody here is, what is your most favorite sci-fi program and or fantasy program that you've watched on TV, whether it be movie or television show, and kind of just tell us a little bit of why. And if you have one of each, even better. You can kind of go into details on that a little bit. And I suppose we can just start right down the line. We can go right with Rosemay, that you can see on our stream. She's next in line. And then we can go right into Cersei, Tony. And then if Lies happens to join us at that time, we can ask him then. So go ahead, Rose. What's your influences? What shows kind of like got you into the whole sci-fi fantasy kind of vibe?
Well, that's a very easy question for me. But I do want to say, before I started watching this show, I was very much into sci-fi and fantasy just from reading books in childhood and seeing movies or watching TV shows, with my family. But of all time, my most favorite sci-fi show has to be Battlestar Galactica, the remake that started in the early 2000s. And it's hard to describe like how much I love this show, and probably why, but it's got amazing actors, amazing music. The music is just so great for the story, for warning you about what's going on. I just am so surprised at how much it just adds to the show. But ultimately, I think what I loved most about it is how sitting in this, sci-fi galaxy, unlike our own, it could comment on so many things that are going on in our lives and in the world around us. And I was always really impressed how the connections could be made. And I know that's true for many sci-fi shows. But I felt, for me, Battlestar just really did a great job with that. And I could watch it over and over. Actually, Katie Sackhoff, the actor that plays Starbuck, just started doing a rewatch, or a first watch, because she never watched the show, with her husband, and she's posting on YouTube. So I've been listening to those and really enjoying that and getting back into it again.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that, Rose. And what about you, Cersei?
Apologies. I like, for fantasy, I've always been drawn to, type of Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, some Lord of the Rings. I'm honestly not as much into Lord of the Rings as a lot of other people are. But that's just kind of been the genres, the TV shows that I've kind of been drawn to. I really enjoy I'm very much into kind of the political scheming and all of that in fantasy. That's always been a draw to me. For sci-fi, I don't have as many, but one sci-fi show that I watched, my dad actually watched it, and I watched it with him growing up, and I've watched it. I've rewatched it over the years. Is Fringe. That is a very good TV show. I really enjoyed because it's got the sci-fi, it's got the paranormal, it's also like a drama, and it's also J.J. Abrams was one of the creators of it. So it was a really good show that really inspired some of my interest in kind of that sci-fi genre. And of course, Star Wars. I've never wasn't really into Star Trek or anything else, but Star Wars was, again, another thing, like with my dad, that he watched those things, so I'd sometime watch those shows with him, and I enjoy kind of like the sci-fi version of almost like a Game of Thrones thing with Star Wars, and it kind of reads into that same world. And it, growing up, those were opportunities to spend some time with my dad. We didn't have a lot we enjoyed together, but like watching some of those shows was always nice. Kind of gave us a little bit of together time that we didn't always have. So I enjoyed that, and that's kind of contributed to the type of characters I play and portray in these kind of games and in our pen and papers.
Awesome. And what about you, Tony?
Well, I'm a little bit older than the rest of y'all, and I actually grew up watching Star Trek, the original series, weekly with my parents, and so that's where my sci-fi started. I never really got into reading sci-fi. I was more into mysteries and fantasy for reading, but I went from Star Trek to Star Wars to Battlestar Galactica to a number of other sci-fi series. I happen to really enjoy, and it was along the Trek lines, was Deep Space Nine. I know a lot of people either ignored it or didn't appreciate it quite as much as I did, but I thought it was cool that there was actually a non-planet-based area that dealt with the amalgamation of all these different people coming together. Now going to fantasy, I'm with Cersei. I didn't watch Game of Thrones as much, but Wheel of Time is actually one of my favorites that I've watched 2 or 3 times now. And the intrigue, I think, is what got me on those.
Nice. And then it looks like Liz is joining us. So, Liz, I don't know if you heard the question.
I did. I've been listening offline.
Oh, awesome.
I like a lot of the previous that everyone said. I watched Battlestar with Rose. She forced it as soon as we got together. So, but I like more Farscape, SG-1, Stargate. But I love all of it. That's the big thing. But I'm one of those people that could watch all of the Stargate series, SG-1, Atlantis, and even into the Origins and Universe. So.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I like SG-1. My weird take on fantasy is my first introduction to fantasy, and this is going to sound so campy. I actually liked watching the original Hercules and Xeno when they first came out. That's actually what got me into the whole fantasy vibe, is those campy little shows in the 90s. I don't know if you guys remember those, but they were great.
I do. And Lucy Lawless being Xena is actually kind of a fluke. She starred on one of the Herculeses right before, and the actress that was supposed to be playing Xena dropped out, and she got to pick it up. So she got a really, really big boosting her career from that.
Well, I'm glad that happened that way because I can't see anyone else being Xena. I think for
Lucy is flawless.
I think for sci-fi, I actually the original, not the original, but I think the Next Generation is actually what got me into sci-fi originally, and then Star Wars. Which sounds weird because I'm a complete nerd when it comes to Star Wars, but TNG was what I saw first on TV, and I think that definitely got me into the whole thing. And then obviously, like you said, Lies, SG-1, I think that was a huge sci-fi moment for me. It had like
We're
that.
gonna have a new one coming up.
I saw, and actually, it's going to have some of the original cast in there too. At least doing
it's gonna be
cameos.
Some of the original showrunners too, and ILM for the visual effects.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yep, Industrial Light and Magic is one of their partners.
Let's hope they can pull that off.
I just want to see the helmet go sliding back for the Jaffa. I love the movie.
Do you want the original Raw helmets, or do you want the ones that we saw on SG-1?
Oh no, the original Raw. The Snapjaws were just this is how we're gonna have to do this because we don't have the effects budget.
I mean, they did show a few of the scenes with the helmets collapsing in on the neck piece, but there wasn't too many of those scenes. I think one of the first scenes was with Teal'c, right? In the first season, they showed his helmet kind of collapsing.
I think so, but it was very snappy most of the time too.
Yeah, it wasn't movie quality, that's for sure.
And that's what I like in my sci-fi is I like the effects to look real and just phenomenal.
Well, I mean, I think a good segue too for that, about that realism. I think when you look at fantasy and sci-fi, I think there is a lot of commonality between fantasy and sci-fi when it comes to visuals. I think those are equally important to have. Obviously, I think some of us would agree that acting is also fundamental. But when you guys look at fantasy and sci-fi, which genre are you guys kind of drawn to more? Are you drawn more towards fantasy or more towards sci-fi if you had that choice of an actual like good running shows out there?
That's a really hard question because if we're just talking about shows, probably sci-fi, but like for books, I lean more towards fantasy, and for online games, I lean more towards fantasy as well. So it really depends on kind of where we're at. Yeah.
Very fair.
Mine depends on my mood, but a lot of what I lean toward is sci-fi just because that happens to be my background longer than fantasy. Though they keep coming up with great fantasy shows now, so.
Yeah, for y'all that don't know, with Tony's background, she's actually an alien. So that's why she feels more comfortable with the sci-fi. Oh my goodness. I do prefer fantasy in general. But I also think because I prefer it, if I find like a show or a movie that's sci-fi that I really like, it has a greater impact on me because I don't watch as many of them. So, and I don't stick to them as much. So if I find something that really grabs my attention, it's like, oh, this is a really good show because normally I don't watch this, or normally I'm not like drawn to this. So it has a bigger impact on me than maybe a fantasy show would, because while I love my fantasy shows, there's those can be a dime a dozen sometimes for me, where you might find like one good like sci-fi show or movie and be like, oh, this is really good. Like, yeah, there's a lot of that kind of dynamic as well for me.
What about you, Liz?
I like everything, unfortunately. I just consume everything fantasy sci-fi that I can get my hands on. And I found that writing really will hold me to something over even like reminiscence or lore.
Oh, you mean
Or
you don't
Academy.
like? I was gonna say you don't like the Academy show.
Things don't
They
need to be
canceled
what
it.
if. No, they put two in the can. They put 2 seasons in the can and then canceled it. So there's a whole nother season gonna release for Academy because they did them almost back to back.
Uh,
That's when you really know a project is probably in trouble if they immediately put 2 seasons on film because they know the backlash is gonna happen.
I mean, I think that's a good example of taking a beloved thing and then trying to make it into something else. The fan base definitely speaks loudly, and you can't get away with like little lore discrepancies as easily as you could with something that's original to your own concept, right? So I think that's what Academy kind of teaches us. And Acolyte.
Yeah, Acolyte was not well written at all.
Yeah, super fans, and actually I think even normal fans are just I think they look at something and they could see the discrepancies in lore, and when you're trying to piece it together with other aspects of different movies and media from that same genre, it's very hard to swallow, and you're like, that makes no sense. So, acting and personnel aside, the story is what really tends to grip people, and if the story's not there, well, you could have the most beautiful graphics in the world, but that's not enough to carry a show. So
It's like what if you wanted to make Fallout, but in college? That just drives me insane.
I mean, it'd be pretty cool to see a ghoul leading a class. Just saying.
It's true. Fallout world and the way they've done it is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it could be like some weird people sitting in a classroom all like trying to educate themselves, and I bet you that would work in Fallout. I bet you it could be very campy too. Instead of a vault, you're following a class.
Yeah, tunes from the vault or something.
Yeah, that'd be funny actually. All right, so now since we're talking about kind of sci-fi and fantasy, and you guys actually have been able to play both fantasy pen and paper and sci-fi pen and paper, what are the pros that you've experienced with like your Star Wars pen and paper and the Daggerheart? I won't even focus on the cons. Like, what are things that you really enjoyed exploring in those pen and paper universes when it comes to Final Fantasy, fantasy and sci-fi?
For me, for fantasy, when we started Daggerheart, that just felt really familiar because I feel like I've played a lot of online games with magic and having magic available and being able to cast spells. That all felt very familiar, and living in a world that has halflings and gnomes and dwarves, and that's all and it was so much fun to be a part of that world that we started there with that campaign. Whereas with our Star Wars campaign, like that felt very it was definitely not my comfort zone. So for me, the pros for that was just learning a really new way of thinking and a new system. So as we got into it, I really enjoyed like figuring out, okay, how do things work in this world, and like how do I like express myself, like become this different character with these different skills that feel more related to me in real life than a fantasy character would feel, whereas I feel like they're much farther away from myself. So I enjoy both of them a lot, but for very different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Rose. I enjoy them both. Um, I think with the Star Wars, it's it's different in a lot of ways because kind of similar to Rose, it's not my comfort zone. I don't play or do a lot of sci-fi games. Um, and I haven't done a ton of pen and paper stuff. So um, it was the first kind of real thing we were getting into. And so there was almost like a level of intimidation to it. But I enjoy it because as we ventured through the world, you see familiar things like from books and movies that we've watched and read, and it's like, oh, I know what this is, or oh, I know where this is heading. And it's kind of, it gives you like you have like that almost like muscle memory of like what you've seen in like popular culture and in your movies and stuff. So I've enjoyed that connection. I've also enjoyed, I feel like because we do have a world in Star Wars that's different from, you know, our Daggerheart. You know, you don't have magic and spells. Yes, some people have, and some races have certain abilities. The Jedi obviously are unique in their own way, but I feel like for me, the Star Wars stuff is almost a little bit more intimidating because it's like, I can't just cast a spell and get out of here. We might get pushed into a corner and just die. So it's been a challenge in some ways, but it's been enjoyable because we found our path through here. We found the ways, you know, somewhat uniquely of getting out of some pretty tight spots. I mean, I just think of the time that they were down in like that cave and Cecile got captured and then got out to the group. And then they were struggling to fight and she like tried to talk them and trick them. I don't know. It was a lot. And it was stressful, I think, in that moment for everyone. But it was also like when we got through it, like, wow, we did a lot in that cave. Like we did a lot. And then we got out of the cave and we had to get back to our ship and go through a whole path for that. So yeah, it's like it's been very fun with that. And then on the fantasy side, Daggerheart, I've enjoyed that because partially because that's a world we've made ourselves. You know, we've built the lore. Yes, we've taken inspirations from different things that are in the world, but it's just like almost like for me, the Daggerheart is kind of like comforting. It's like almost like comfort food. It's like, okay, this doesn't feel so out there at times. There's still new and unknown things, but it's almost like you're kind of coming home to something you're used to. And it might be a little bit like me being selfish in that, you know, my characters in in Star Wars are very different from my character in Daggerheart. I have a very much light-hearted character in Daggerheart. So when I'm playing Daggerheart, it's like I don't have to worry about planning. I just have to be here for the party, basically. And like in Star Wars, you really do need to make a plan. So like I've just enjoyed both of them. They're both unique in their own ways, and our characters have really worked well together. So I'm excited to see, you know, for Daggerheart specifically, like where we go, you know, from here.
I'm the exact opposite from the other two ladies. I'm more familiar with the sci-fi, so that's more comfortable for me. Whereas Daggerheart, trying to figure out, okay, well, what magic does what, and how does this fit, and how are we going to get out of this situation where when I can't use the Force, when I can't use simple everyday means. But it's been quite fun for me being able to expand upon my little bit of knowledge in the fantasy world. And I lost my train of thought. But anyways,
Hopefully it's a boomerang. It'll come back. I like both. I like all the systems because I've played since I was 16. So the system itself is what I really like getting into. And I don't have a preference of anything, really. I just put a system in front of me and I'm going to try to figure it out.
Yeah, I think it was, to paraphrase Star Trek Next Generation, because I don't know the exact quote, I would say that there's a quote that Picard, I think, says something about what we once believed to be magic is simply science that we do not yet comprehend. And I think for people who are like comfortable with like the fantasy aspect of it, with the whole magical properties and stuff, I would kind of take like sci-fi, like, you know, like Star Wars with the Force, or our upcoming project. A lot of the stuff that you will be doing in these systems is kind of like magic. It's just explained easily by science.
It's Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Ah, okay. I knew I heard something from somewhere. I know Picard said something like that, akin to that.
Yeah, he referenced Clarke.
Ah, okay. So yeah, I was on that wavelength for sure. But I think that's a very applicable quote for sure. Especially since all of you in this channel are doing 2 different genres of pen and paper, alternating every Sunday. You're jumping into a fantasy world, and then you're jumping into a sci-fi world. And I think the easiest way to kind of like bridge the gap for comfort might be to view it that way. Is to view it like, hey, the science fiction world is just, it's magic done in a different way. Probably more so in Star Wars, right? Because the Force is kind of magic-y in its own unique mannerisms. So it's probably the closest thing in sci-fi that we've done that's kind of linked with magic. I mean, even the Night Sisters have, they practice magic. They just call it, they call it magic themselves, so there is magic in Star Wars. It's just not the same, right? Because you're not casting like magic missiles in D&D, or I don't know. I can't think of a Daggerheart ability off my top of my head because those are still fairly new to me. But little animal, I guess, Cersei, that you can transform into, right? That's very whimsically fantasy kind of magic.
The druid.
Yeah. Yeah, and you guys have actually done a lot of narrative-based pen and paper systems. You guys kind of, minus lies, most of you kind of just briefly touched 5e. So, with the announcement that we have coming out just a little bit later in this stream, are you a little nervous about getting into 5e? And if not, why?
I am nervous about 5e. My only experience with it was a brief. I joined into the D&D campaign late for a few sessions, and I went in unprepared, like not really understanding the system, figuring out how to learn it as I went, and that was not the way to go for me. I really have found that I need to understand the system to feel more comfortable when I'm in a role-playing situation, because otherwise I feel like I don't have a good foundation to ground myself in. So I am nervous about the upcoming 5e game that we'll be playing, but I'm trying to approach it with a lot more just reading and learning about it and thinking about it, so that hopefully it won't be as stressful or as confusing to me as I found it before.
What about the rest of you guys?
Well, for me and my older brain, I get to relearn it. So it's a little stressful. But then as we play more, a little bit more comes I remember a little bit more at a time and a little bit more, but there's still plenty of it that we never even touched on that I'm looking forward to actually getting into, just for a different type of depth for my character.
I was just gonna say that I'm not nervous per se, but this is gonna be more in depth than our Star Wars, and the system itself is gonna be obviously more fleshed out, more in depth than our other campaigns we've done. And I think that's my only kind of hesitation, is that I'm got a lot to learn, because we did start something before, but it was a very different setting. And it also, we didn't really dive as deep as I think we're going to dive into this. So there's some hesitation there, but I'm also feel good because we have had time as a group to do this stuff together. So it kind of gives you some comfort and you're not jumping into a brand new group with this stuff. Because when we first started our last 5e campaign, which I don't think we didn't really stream it like we are now. But we kind of were friends, but we were all kind of a brand new group. So it was a lot to kind of get into. Here, at least, we're not a brand new group. We've all done this stuff before, just in a different setting and a different system. So we're, in a way, all kind of taking some time to get adjusted to the system, but we don't have to adjust to each other, which I think takes some of the stress away. It's like, hey, we're all friends here. We've all done these things, these campaigns before. It's just a matter of adjusting to like this rule set more comfortably, and obviously the setting, which will be a little bit different. But I think otherwise it should be a lot of fun once we get going.
And what I won't ask you the same question, Wise, but what advice would you give new players going into 5e?
Just buy into your character. You are powerful, and the spell that you think you might need later will never come. Use your skills, use your spells. If all those fails, we're going to figure it out. So utilize your class to the max.
And I might give a little bit different advice here. I would say embrace your character. I know we do a lot of narrative systems, but D&D can be just as narrative. Think outside the box. Don't be scared to think outside the box. And, if there's something you think you can do with strength, and I'm like, I need you to roll a dex, but like, well, I would prefer rolling strength, and this is how I would go about doing it. Challenge me on that. And I would definitely encourage you to do that. I wouldn't say there's no like hard wrong answer. There's just might be more of a better response, I guess, that I would give you. Like, well, sure, you could do the strength, or maybe in that situation, what you're describing still sounds like dex. So to challenge me, that's what I would definitely do in 5e and in Daggerheart, but I would still definitely challenge me as the game master just to try to do things outside the box. Don't be scared to, sometimes going against the rules is completely legit. Sometimes it's better just to go, you know what, let's dismiss the rules for this instance because this actually sounds really fun. So I just want to throw that out there too.
I really appreciate the advice from both of you. And I think going back to what Liz said about using what you have, it's something we've talked about before. Like, it makes me really nervous having spell slots and running out of them. So I think that's really good advice that I should keep in mind when we're in the 5e system. And then Nahili, with your advice about thinking outside the box, I think that I've noticed, like, so some of us are really good at that. I know Geller's really good at that in Daggerheart. I've noticed, and it's something I feel like I need to work on. That's not something that comes as easily to me, at least not yet. But I think it's something I will keep in mind for our next campaign.
Yeah, I think you guys probably have enough experience now to determine, like, pen and paper is a collaborative thing. Players are not any less important than the game master. In fact, I would say players are more important than the game master. So always try to collaborate, not just with the game master, but with each other too. And I think that anxiety of a new system will wash away pretty quickly when you realize, like, we're here to have fun. And, any mistakes that we make, because I'm going to make mistakes, it's okay. If it's a system related mistake, we'll go with the flow. We'll make a decision in the moment, and then we'll fix it the next session. But we won't get hung up on the little things, and I hope that helps at least alleviate some of, like, the stresses of trying to be perfect. Because I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to definitely make mistakes. There's a lot of rules, a lot of things to try to remember, and I'm not going to remember them all. So
And if you see a way, like you read the book and you have a skill that works a certain way and you think it works that way, bring it up to the GM. Or, if they, if somebody pushes against, essentially, you just say, hey, this is what I think. And then everybody kind of look at it, read it, and come to a consensus too.
yep, totally collaborative. I embrace that collaborative nature. Will there be times where I'm like, no, let's just stick with that? Yeah. But I mean, I think that's just part of trying to keep the story going, right? If you're stuck on a topic and there's no agreement, sometimes it's best just to go, let's just move on. But we'll think of that going forward. As long as no one takes anything personally, we'll have a good time. We'll have a blast.
I think that goes back to the fact that this is not a brand new group. That we do have the communication already established. We easily talk with one another and so forth. So that I think is going to be one of our biggest pluses going forward.
No, it'll be a good time. And actually, I think this is a good stopping point, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Cersei the floor to discuss some Daggerheart lore. And then if you guys have any like specific questions that you've been like gnawing at to know, maybe it's something that Cersei can like delve into a little bit. Obviously, if it's story related, like into your current story situation, she might not know the answers to that, because some of that is being made up on the spot, but she'll know like the general lore of the world that has been created. And I'd like us to delve just a little bit into our fantasy world of Daggerheart.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of here if people have questions about the world we've kind of worked and adapted for Daggerheart. We've spent pretty much all of our time at this point on the western continent of Ardenfall. And that's where we've spent our story. We start off on like a little island just off of the coast of Ardenfell. Excuse me, I say Ardenfall all the time. It's Ardenfell. And we started our story off there and did all of the machinations there that kind of led us to Valmir, where we again went through a whole thing, getting trapped in a dungeon cell, and now venturing down through like a catacombs. And where we ended our story, we had just gotten out of the catacombs after discovering a dead silver sister, and kind of recovering some of her memory. That was actually, I believe that was Arve who did that. Is that correct, Arve? That you were the one who recovered like that memory or feeling she had?
Yes, she has a ability that, if depending on how long ago the person expired, she can tap into a memory or a experience or sight. Very briefly, though.
Yes, and I think in that we were able to determine she obviously was fearful when she passed, and then there was like a glowing, like I think it was like almost like a crystal of some kind that was on her that then reflected like a memory or a message she was trying to communicate to the group, about the importance of an important message that she was trying to impart, I think, to her sisters. Something she was looking into. Um, I know Thistle and Arve and the others saw that message, and obviously we're kind of at the point now where they've gotten out of the catacombs area and now above ground and trying to figure out, where they go from here. I think they're close to a certain little halfling village around that area, so they might be investigating further, or they might go a completely different direction. Um, we haven't had a ton of interactions with the Sisterhood of the Veil, since we started, but we've definitely had a ton of information. And I think one thing that we can kind of make out of all of this is that whatever's been going on, the Sisterhood has their hands on it in some way or some type of affiliation. All the way back from when they were on that little like island to now being here on the main continent. I think there's definitely a feeling that there's definitely more to uncover. But yeah, I mean, and just some background, because I know we've talked about the Sisterhood a little bit. I'll just take a moment to say the Sisterhood is made up of different ranks and different colors, as they're called. They're called the 5 colors. There's the crimson, the silver, the emerald, the sapphire, and the golden. Those are the colors of the sisters. Each represents a different focus. Your Crimson Sisters, which, if we go back to the episode, Geller was allegedly killed a Crimson Sister before, and the Crimson Sisters are known as like the warriors. They're the people that are the people that will be fighting in a war or fighting as guards or guardians. The Silver Sisters, which we encountered, the one that had passed, those are people that are focused on illusions, perceptions, and memories. And so they're usually trying to uncover truths or keep secrets safe. And I have another character that's a Silver Sister. The Emerald Sisters, which this is kind of a spoiler, but Raiden's character has an association with an emerald, or at least a former Emerald Sister, and they are focused on healing. They're the healers, and they're focused on being healers with midwives. They're the people that would heal someone in dire need. The Sapphire Sisters, those are more like your judges and your people who like interpret law, and will also be the people that would pass judgment if you'd broken the law. They'd be the people that said you killed a Crimson Sister, then you are to be wiped of your memories or your powers taken away, whatever abilities to be taken. They're kind of probably the coldest of the sisters. And then you have the Golden Sisters, which are your diplomats, your envoys, the people who, can spin a tale. They're your storytellers. And that kind of just gives an overview of the different colors. At the top of the chain of the Sisterhood is the Prismatic Matron. She is the leader of the Sisterhood. And she has obviously people under her, but that is the leader of the Sisterhood, and they exist in the Riverlands at their home. And that will be a place we might encounter in our story. That's kind of like just a little overview of the Sisterhood. And I guess the last bit I'll kind of give an overview of. I won't go in super in depth, but coming from Valmir is very much the nobility city of the continent. And we already encountered a couple houses that exist in the city. There's a couple main houses. House Dravone is the house that is associated with Raiden's character. They're more of your kind of typical kind of warrior war focused house. You have House Vera, which is more of your merchant-focused house. You have House Calethorn, which is kind of like your performer, your kind of mask secrecy house. You have House Theros, which is also associated kind of a similar way with House Calethorn. They have some secrets to them. And then you have House Daenerys, which is the royal house. That is the house where the current queen hails from in Valmir, which Valmir does have a queen. So that's a little tidbit of lore there too. But that's just an overview of some of the sisterhood and the nobility. There's different clans as well. There's the orcs that worship a sun god or a volcanic god. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which one. The god of the flame, sorry. And then you have the halflings from Brindlebrook and other little areas. And then, of course, you do have the Great Dwarven Empire in the mountains of Khazad-dûm. But that's just a little bit of an overview. So if you all have any additional questions, just, ask them.
I figure I'll give you guys a few moments.
Oh, one thing I wondered about the sisters, I think we've talked about how they'll identify young girls who have a power and take them from their families for training. And I was wondering, do those sisters ever have any future contact with their families? Do they ever go back and visit them, or is it just something that's completely cut off when they're taken away?
It is meant to be they're completely cut off. They are not. The sisterhood becomes your family. It's basically a trade of you will amass great power and influence, but you will never, return to your family. In general, the sisters do not keep a last name or a family name. There are obviously some exceptions. Usually, if you come from noble birth, potentially you might be able to keep some semblance of that because there's a level of, nobility kind of seeming like they have some authority and saying, oh, well, you're a member of this house, so you should be able to hold this. The sisterhood will allow, I say this, they will allow some exceptions here and there, but it's frowned upon. Like if you come in, it's kind of like if you come into the class and, oh, you're the one who gets to keep your name or keep, your association in some form. It's not something that would be prideful. It would almost be like a mark against you. So in general, no, they wouldn't really keep connection with their family because their home becomes Celestra, which is the city of the sisterhood. That becomes their home. They don't have a home outside of that. And in general, if they were to leave the Celestra, they have to have a clear purpose for it. Like they have to be sent on almost like a mission to be able to leave. It's not something that they just get to leave freely whenever they want and do whatever they want. That they definitely live a very controlled life.
That makes sense. I think I was thinking of sisters kind of being seen out in the world regularly, but maybe it's less likely someone would have seen a sister in their lifetime if they're so limited in their excursions.
It just would be purposeful. So, for example, the sisters are the ones who would be sent out to collect, people who show the gift. So there would be sisters that would most likely come through a local village and such to try to identify, any potential, new recruits, basically. And then, of course, you would have sisters that work in Valmir, because you have the Golden Sisters, which are, again, your diplomatic kind of your diplomats, and then you have the Red Sisters, the Crimson Sisters rather, that are more of your like protectors. So that they exist outside of Celestra, but it's just a matter of what is their purpose. Like they are trained and prepared in Celestra to be able to be something else in the world, but their ultimate service is into the sisterhood, though they are heavily involved with the nobility, because they have a lot of power and authority that in a lot of ways kind of grinds against the nobility, because the nobility themselves, they have power in their money and their influence. But when you have power, actual power that the sisterhood has, it kind of eclipses all of the money and wealth that someone could have. It's actually one reason that even though Valmir is technically the capital, Valmir doesn't really act without Celestra's blessing, kind of thing. Like there's almost like a understanding between the two. Like even the royal family of Valmir understands that they have to act with the sisterhood in mind, because if they were to act against the sisterhood could easily react, and if they react, then it could actually be dangerous, because the sisterhood has the capacity and power to harm Valmir if they want to. But they've kind of grown over time to see there's a benefit there for them to coexist. And so you have the sisterhood who is almost like, think of it like, maesters in Game of Thrones, where, the maesters from the Citadel are going and they're part of all these great houses and all these, there's one in every house. A lot of these noble families and a lot of these, villages might employ a green sister, for example, an emerald sister who's a healer, and they might have them in there. So you might actually have sisters that are more spread out, because their goal is to kind of be entwined in a lot of different places. As long as in their purpose, while they might be a healer, it could also be a purpose to gather information that they could report back to the sisterhood. So they're kind of like, you might be surprised how ingrained they can be, and it might not be completely evident that how much they are. Like you might have in a small village like Brindlebrook, you could have potentially a halfling sister there who could be a healer, somebody who's always been there to help, always been great, but at the end of the day they might also be passing messages to the sisterhood or passing messages here and there. So there's a little level of intrigue potentially there as well with them.
I find the sister story and everything about them so interesting in our world of Daggerheart. And like with our party, we've got magic users, and I wonder like how much, like we know one of our characters already has a past that's directly intersecting with the sisterhood, but we've got a few others that are using magic. How much would that be on the radar of a sister if she was around? Like, it's our level of magic, okay, or you really shouldn't be doing that, even though you're not a male person.
I think there's a level of, how to say this, there's a level of understanding that maybe they won't capture every person who uses the gift or what have you, but I think they're looking for a particular type of individual that fits almost a certain mold. If you are a human female who shows or in potentially other races, but I think they kind of are building into like an ideal version of what they're looking for to represent the sisterhood, and an ideal power level, and potentially if you are young but you aren't exhibiting that power, they might not start your training, or they might not move to collect you. They're not going through and just collecting people in their mid-age that show magic ability. They are very much collecting basically children when they're going through and collecting them. So, if you don't get noticed as, a child, then they might kind of not, pay a ton of attention to you. Now, if you were to become, extremely powerful or show extreme ability of like, oh my gosh, you have not even been properly trained by us at the sisterhood and yet you're showing all this potential, then they might still collect you or try to collect you. But I think once you get to adulthood, it's less about training you and more about control, which the sisterhood is very much about control in general. But I think they take children because they think of them as controlling to shape them and make them part of their organization. If they take someone as an adult, then they're probably taking them to control them and potentially, imprison them because they don't want that power that could be out in the world without their direct control. And training someone as an adult is probably less ideal than trying to train them as a child. Yeah, so that's kind of how I'd view that potentially, in regards to like older people. I think with the males, I think Geller specifically, Geller is probably the most risky character in our group. And I think he's definitely like, he has the biggest potential to really get them in trouble. Just because he's a male, but he's also a dwarf. And based on kind of how the history of the world has been, the race, I think that orcs are also up there, but I think the dwarves and the sisterhood have the most contentious relationship. And the fact that he is a male and a dwarf and he uses magic pretty, he's very obvious with his magic. He definitely would catch the eye of the sisterhood, and they would not think twice about trying to collect him and control him, rather. So yeah, I think he's actually the riskiest in the group for as things are. So he has to probably walk the carefulest line, and he'll probably have to continue that through this, at least while they're on this continent, because he's always going to be probably a prime suspect. And also because he has himself said his history of, killing a sister or being accused of killing a sister, that even like escalates his like notoriety to another level. So yeah, he's definitely in a tight bind.
Yes, yeah, that revelation was very concerning, I think, for all of us. So you mentioned this continent. So this is only Ardenfell, the eastern continent, that has the sisterhood. They're not really present on the western continent.
Their presence is mainly in Ardenfell. I would not say that they've never been to the Elven continent. Like, there was never been a sister over there. But I almost suggest that if a sister went over to the Elven continent, that they may not actually return. And this is just me kind of theory crafting. I think the society that, and this was Nahili that made the Elven continent, but I think the society that he's made over there is just very different in a lot of ways. And that the people that are more attuned or curious, because a sister's not just going to go over there. Like, a red sister probably would have no reason to go over there unless they were like planning a war. I think you most likely would see a sister go over there. Probably a silver sister who is the more curious type would probably find a different lifestyle over there, and maybe they might not return potentially. So I'd say most likely the sisterhoods that exist on Ardenfell don't have a ton of information about the Elven continent beyond what maybe they've gotten correspondence from somebody. Because I wouldn't imagine anyone currently part of the sisterhood who is currently on Ardenfell has been to the the Elven continent. At least in our current story, I don't believe so. Could be wrong, but I don't think they would have been.
Dot. We'll find out. I mean, we did find out that they maybe had an incursion to the north, so very rare to go to the northern continent. So, anyone else have questions for Cersei regarding our Daggerheart world?
Or Nahili. Nahili made the Elven continent, so if you have questions about that part, that is definitely a Nahili question.
Yeah, we haven't really been. I mean, we've got Arve, who is from the Western continent, but we haven't really, other than that, touched on it much. So that'll be. I feel like we have a very large world to explore here.
You do, and I think a lot of it's really good to learn while you're playing, right? It's kind of like our next adventure here. I'm telling you, I don't expect you all to know the lore. So I think it's the same feeling with our Daggerheart, is that we don't expect you to know all the lore. Know enough lore to at least build your character and build like a little story around them, but no one's even telling you need to know everything about Ardenfell either. That's the nice thing about playing a character, is that even in real life, someone that lives in the state of Tennessee might not know anything about the state of Montana, and vice versa, right? So it's the same with Ardenfell. If you're from a certain part of Ardenfell, you probably don't know. You might not even know anything about the sisters. You might have heard of them, but you might have your own wild theories about, they eat their children or whatever. Who knows? It could be all within your own little folklore. So that's the fun thing about role playing.
They do not eat their children. Just putting that for out there.
Squash that rumor before it starts.
Squash the rumor. They do not eat children. But you can definitely see, like, they came in the night and took all these children. What are they doing with them?
Exactly. And I think that's the important part with pen and paper, is that I don't think you're meant to know everything. And when you role play, even in an MMORPG, I think playing a character that knows all the lore just doesn't feel right. So I think you guys playing your characters, knowing at least your local lore, I think that's important to at least make your character feel part of the world. But I don't think anyone expects anyone to know the whole world. I think that's unrealistic. Well, I think that's a good segue into our final part of our stream here. I know we're going to be pushing over a little bit, but that's okay. I'd rather push over a little bit and get everything out clearly. But our new project is going to be our Mass Effect 5e. We are putting a hold on our Star Wars world for now. We will be coming up with little snippets of what our characters did after their last mission, just so that way we could properly put it on the shelf. The reason I'm saying it that way is because we might go revisit that one day. We don't want to necessarily close that chapter. It's due to a technical issue that happened with the system. So we put a lot of work into Star Wars. It was actually, for the most truest sense of the word, I think it was definitely the first true introduction for some of the people on our stream today to pen and paper. I think that's a fair assessment, right?
Yeah, I would say for me, that was, I learned a lot.
So we will be going into Mass Effect's universe now, and that I can certainly see where it goes back to what Rose said, that there's a little nerves going into that, because not only are you going into a new pen and paper system, obviously for Lies, he's done D&D before. You guys have all touched D&D, but D&D is definitely a whole beast of its own. It's a lot different from Edge of the Empire system. So I'm just going to go into a little bit about what Mass Effect's universe is like, and hopefully help alleviate some of that concern going into a brand new universe that, let's be fair, only probably two of us really know any depth of that. And that would be Raps and myself, because we played the series probably thousands of hours and probably read the books and all that stuff. So But that's okay. That's why I'm doing this today, just to kind of give you a synopsis of what you're going into. So the universe of Mass Effect is vast. It's an interconnected galaxy. It's shaped by ancient discoveries. There's diverse intelligent species and a fragile balance between cooperation and conflict. At its core, it is a setting where advanced technologies have allowed civilizations to transcend the limits of their home worlds, yet where the fundamental struggles of identity, power, and survival remain ever present. So it's not like Star Trek, where there's like a harmonious nature with the Federation and other species. Sure, there's conflicts and stuff, but for the most part, the Federation tries to look past like cultural differences and try to embrace, the individual cultures within their Federation. This is completely different. Turians, humans, Asari, all of them have their own unique cultural identifiers, and there is a lot of tension. Humanity is a relative newcomer to the galaxy stage. They have only recently discovered faster than light travel through the use of what we call Mass Effect fields. This technology is something that manipulates the fundamental properties of mass. Humans have rapidly expanded beyond their solar system, which you guys actually will be embarking on your first mission to one of those colonies that the humans have established called Eden Prime. The humans are ambitious, adaptable, just like you'd expect from humans in sci-fi literature. They both have earned respect, but also suspicion among older, more established species like the Asari, the Solarians, and the Turians, who are the three representative council races on the Citadel. The tensions do reflect one that is a central theme of this universe. So you're going to get a lot of tensions between these races. There's going to be a lot of conflicts. Not all Turians are going to hate humans. Not all humans are going to hate Turians. But I bring those two up specifically because humans and Turians, they actually had something called the First Contact Wars. The Turians came across the humans. There was this huge conflict that erupted. So that, that's where the Turian human kind of like comes into place. At the heart of the galactic civilization, the whole galaxy that you guys will be playing in, I mentioned it earlier, it's called the Citadel. It is an immense space station that does serve as both political, cultural, and an economic hub of the whole entire galaxy. It is governed by the Council, which is represented, again, by those influential species that I've named. Those are the Solarians, which, Rose, you're playing a Solarian, the Asari, which Tony's playing an Asari, and a Turian, none of you are playing a Turian. Those are the three primary species within the council, and they're the ones that basically oversee the governance of the known galaxy. The council, the Citadel does represent a symbol of unity. It is the center of, I guess, the galaxy in terms of like importance. But it's also important to note that it is a bureaucracy. It is forged on tradition, and there is a very slow pace of institutional change. So those council races that I mentioned, those three species, they typically don't want to introduce another species to the council without some extreme scrutiny. It is very hard for like the Volus, which is another species that you'll learn about, or the Elk, or even the humans to get on the council, because these three governing species, they're very picky, extremely picky. This is where in the council chambers, laws are debated, alliances are forged, and disputes are mediated, but they're not always resolved. Amongst the Citadel, there is a group called the Spectres, and the Spectres are created from all the races except humanity at this moment. Humanity doesn't have a Spectre within their forces. In fact, the Spectres are primarily created from the Solarians, the Asari, and the Turians. They are a specialized force that does not answer to anyone except perhaps the Council. They overexceed any military structure. And they are essentially allowed to do whatever they're allowed to do as long as they achieve their objectives. So if it is to take out an enemy of the galaxy, but it comes at the cost of destroying a satellite that has 10,000 people on it, oh well. Not that the council doesn't take pause to that, but it just shows you the extremes that these specters can do and still get away with it. So specters, as you can expect, probably have a lot of mistrust from a lot of people. A lot of organized groups probably don't like the specters because they do work outside the laws of the species. The galaxy, like I said, is home to a lot of species. I only mentioned probably 5 of them. They each have their own history, their unique biologies, and cultural identity. For example, the Asari are known for their diplomatic skill and long lifespans, often serving as mediators and leaders. The Turians maintain a highly disciplined, militaristic society, valuing order and hierarchy. The Solarians are quick thinking and scientifically driven, so they often play key roles in research and intelligence. And then in contrast, you have the Krogan, who embody resilience and strength. Kind of think of them as like the Klingons of Mass Effect. They're shaped by a harsh history that definitely has left deep scars on their civilization. So they were raised up by the Solarians to combat a alien species called the Rachni a long time ago, long before the events of what you guys will be playing in. And the Krogan, because they could propagate quickly and amass their numbers quickly, they were able to push back the Arachni into what people expect is their extinction. They saved the galaxy, but then there was a war that erupted from the Krogan, because the Krogan now had become powerful. They took on the rest of the council races, and the Solarians created something called the genophage, which basically made the Krogan unable to reproduce at a very low rate of success. And because they couldn't reproduce and repopulate their armies with new generations, eventually they had to surrender, and the Krogan war pretty much came to an end at that point because of this illness called the genophage. Just to kind of give you a backstory of like why tension exists in this universe. There is a lot of tension between these races. Other species that do add further to the galactic tapestry that I'm painting for you are the Quarians, which Cersei's actually playing a Quarian. We know that they're nomadic people. They do live aboard a vast fleet because they lost their home world to a sentient AI collective. So they're kind of more like a hive mind group known as the Geth. These are technological feats that they created, the Quarians, to help them on their home world called Ronok. And during that whole transgression, this Geth finally rose up, being mistreated, finally realized that they were being mistreating like pretty much like slaves. They rebelled and forced the Quarians into what they call the migrant fleet. And that's where they live. They live in this fleet. This is why when you guys meet Cersei's character for the first time, she'll be in a full bodysuit, because the atmosphere of living in a sterile environment like a fleet and not living in like a planet where you have airborne, toxins being introduced to you as you grow and stuff. They don't have any immunity system, so they have to protect themselves from all this outside force. Another species, like I said, is the Volus and the Elcor. The Volus are kind of like small little creatures. They usually are in full body suits as well. They're very greedy. They're very like a greedy species. They love economies. They love money. Money is usually on their forethought. So kind of think of them as the Ferengi in some ways. If you're familiar with that species from Star Trek, they're kind of like that, but not like obsessively so, like the Ferengi. And then you have the Elcor, which are these giant, like elephant-looking things. They have large forearms and very short legs, but they do stand on all fours. And they speak in a very monotone way. So when you get to introduce them, they'll actually tell you what their mood is while they're talking. So, for example, they'll go, "Joyous occasion. It is nice to meet you, human." It'll be kind of very much like that. They'll always explain their emotion first, then they'll talk to you in like almost the normal way for them. And then the last thing I definitely want to touch here is the society in this universe. It's not shaped only by this, species differences, but it's also kind of a shared reliance on advanced technology. There you have biotic abilities, which a lot of you actually do have access to biotic abilities. I think Cersei is the only one that actually chose the engineer path. The rest of you chose some sort of path that is related to biotics. Biotics are unique because they usually involve like an implant that your character has within you. Obviously, the Asari, they use implants, but they're more naturally gifted to biotics. So they don't have to rely on them as much as like other races do, because the Asari just have this natural affinity to like their own mental landscape. But that's just one thing. They are powers that do allow individuals to manipulate mass and gravity. So when you use your abilities, just remember when you read it, it makes sense why you're able to do the things you're doing, because you're manipulating mass and gravity. But it does blur the line between science and what some others would consider like supernatural gifts. So it is kind of like our magic in our universe. There is artificial intelligence. There is cybernetics. There is interstellar travel. That's all very commonplace. AI is restricted in a lot of ways. There's a lot of restrictions to it. And when an AI does become unshackled, it is like all hands on deck. It's usually looked down upon. Not at the level of Dune, when how Dune thinks of the thinking machine, but it's very close to like it's dangerous to have AI that can think entirely for itself and evolve entirely for itself.
This is why you won't let me be unshackled AI.
You would have a very hard time in the beginning. Yes, very hard time. I don't know if you'd survive.
We start the session on the unshackled AI. We end the session. Okay, Cersei, get back to me for next session. What's your new character's going?
Exactly. Let's see. Okay, so also the past is filled with a legacy of missteps that offer lasting caution towards unchecked innovations, particularly, again, going back to the AI, to the realm of synthetic life. You guys will actually come across a lot of ancient civilizations in your adventures. I'm not going to go into all of them. I feel like that is probably best learned through roleplay. But you're going to unearth a lot of things that you're going to be like, wow, these people were more advanced than what we are. And you're going to come across that. And that's going to be cool, because it's going to be kind of like your Stargate Atlantis kind of vibe, where you're coming across like civilizations that are actually more advanced than you, but they somehow got wiped out. What? Okay, that's weird. I will also say the general premise of conflict within Mass Effect universe, it is rooted both in external threats and internal divisions. So on one level, there are political struggles between species and factions. So if you love political role play, you're definitely going to get a lot of opportunities to see that happen and potentially also engage in that. But then there's also historical grievances and differing philosophies. So you're going to get a lot of tension, not just through combat, not just through politics, but just your day-to-day engagement with other NPCs out there in the universe, and maybe even amongst your own party members, because none of you have really developed your characters yet. You might have an opinion about another character because your character was taught a certain way, and maybe over time your character is going to grow to learn to overcome those phobias of, because you do have two humans on board. The three of you playing alien species, you might have been told something about humans. I mean, the general consensus in the whole galaxies are humans are eager, they're driven, they're bullies, they get what they want, and they're getting it quickly. And a lot of species feel that they're a threat, not just to their own individual interests, but to the galaxy at whole, because humans just got introduced to the large scheme of things, and suddenly they're being thrusted into very important roles. And that's very concerning for a lot of these older species that have been engaged in galactic affairs for much longer than humans have. So that's just something to kind of think about in the background, is like, where does your character fit if you're not human? And if you are human, what are your views on these other races that have been established for so long, and seeing like the council races of the Asari, the Turian, and Solarians kind of being put on a pedestal and no other race is represented? What are your thoughts going to be on that? So these are things that will help you kind of get into characters, like understanding like there's a lot of nuances here. There is also more deeper, more existential concerns as well, because the galaxy is ancient, like I said. There is remnants of long lost civilizations that do and will hint to you all of cycles of rises and falls that extend far beyond the memory of your current species. So even the Asari, who lived thousands and thousands of years, they're still considered young compared to these ancient civilizations that have existed long before they even evolved into what they were. Those mysteries will be the undercurrent for you all while you're traveling through the galaxy. You're going to unearth these secrets, and they're going to help you piece the puzzle together of what's happening to you and the galaxy around you and the problems you're dealing with. So this ancient story is going to unfold as you guys role play in the present time. But ultimately, I'll wrap it up. Mass Effect universe is defined between balance between hope and uncertainty. It's a setting where cooperation has achieved remarkable progress amongst the races, uniting diverse species under a shared system, yet there is potential for conflict always that lingers beneath the surface. There will be interplay between unity and division, progress and caution, and the known and unknowable forms of foundation will be its narrative, which will invite exploration, not just of space, but of the choices that shape the civilizations themselves and the choices that you guys make along the way. So even though we're going to be following the Mass Effect story, ultimately the story is going to be your own, because you're not going to probably end up making the same choices as like Shepard. You might make a completely different choice that leads you down a different path, but it might lead you back to finding and discovering what's going on, just in a different way. So I'll leave that there. Do you guys have any questions about the Mass Effect universe? Was that helpful?
Yes, that was very helpful. And I am sure I'm going to have lots of questions but not quite yet. I'm still trying to absorb it all.
It's a lot.
I have a question. We haven't jumped into this fully yet. And I just want to get like your initial thoughts based on the races and the classes we've chosen. Is there anything that you've been like, oh, I didn't expect that, or I was intrigued by that choice? Before we even jump into it, you're like, oh, well, this person's probably gonna have very interesting times since they chose this race or this class. Did you have any initial like thoughts as you've seen us choose these things?
No. Um, I don't think I had any thoughts either when we did our Star Wars thing, and I think it's because I just want to see where you guys go and how you make them your own. Like I know, like for example, Tony's was a little concerned about playing an Asari because they're an older species, but anyone that's read or played Mass Effect, and I know you guys really haven't, will know a lot of these species have varying personalities. They might cling to like cultural tropes, like the Solari being very scientific. A lot of Solarians are scientific, but there are examples in Mass Effect 2 where they completely deviate from that. And there's a lot of people in these species that deviate from their cultural norms. So I think you guys will be fine playing in the way you want to play them. I think just understanding what your cultural norms are, I think will help at least determine if you want to go be the black sheep of your culture, or do you want to embrace like some of those cultural rituals that are found within them. Like you as a Quarian, Cersei, you're most likely on a pilgrimage of a sort going into this. You like we have in that intro story, you've been brought on board the Normandy to help with the initial launch because you were able to identify some system errors, and against the Alliance's wishes, Captain Anderson brought you on board anyways. But for you, there might be a completely different reason why you accepted this greeting from this human captain to come on board the ship, and it might entirely involve your pilgrimage. And with that said, like, are those things that you're thinking of too? Are you thinking of like, what is my pilgrimage? What is my purpose for being beyond the migrant fleet? Because all Quarians do go on a pilgrimage to bring back something that improves the fleet later on.
Yeah, I definitely have my thoughts and ideas on what that could be. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, and yeah, seeing how it all works it out, because I think obviously we all determine where our characters go and play a part in that, but I think it's this this atmosphere feels like it's going to be unique in its own way, because like some of our characters might have, like my character might be there to help, like you said, like help on something, but ultimately their goal is their own, and they might reach a point, and I'm not saying, oh, she's already planning to leave us. No, I'm just saying there she might reach a point where she's achieved what she needed to do, and she's like, I have to go home now. I have achieved my purpose. And you might have characters or in this, setting that are like that, or you might have characters that decide, or my character might decide at some point, I need to return this home, but I do intend to return to, join you all if you all have me. Like that, I think it'd be interesting to see how this kind of works in this new world we're venturing into.
Yeah, because you have Tony who's playing a commando, brand new commando from the Asari. Commando units in the Asari are kind of like the elite of the elite. She's going to have to kind of overcome her immaturity as a young member of her species. Have you been thinking of that too, Tony?
Yeah, she's an infiltrator, so she's not going to be as into biotics as a lot of the people that she grew up around. She's like you brought up. She's a young Asari too. I did that to play into the chaotic side of her, as well as not knowing as much about the backgrounds of all the politics and so forth. But yeah, she's going to be bucking the norm a little bit. And though I've been thinking about it, nothing's solidified as of this point, other than the fact that she's going to be a sniper.
Yeah, because for you and Rose's character, you guys were assigned to the Normandy because of the Council's interest in the project that the humans and the Turians created. And because the Solarians and the Asari are Council races, you're pretty much given authority to join that crew. Obviously, that is different from the original Mass Effect story, but that's what we're going with, and it makes complete sense. The alliances are going to weaken its stance with the Council, and they're most likely viewing this as an opportunity for them to increase diplomatic affairs between them. So you guys are, in a sense, kind of representing the Council in an offshoot way, which is kind of cool and kind of intimidating a little bit, because Rose is playing a Solarian who is part of their Special Forces division. But she, from what I can tell from her character sheet, you're playing more or less like a medical professional. Is that correct?
She's not super medical. She is a scholar background, so she studied biology, and that's how she ended up with a medical kit. But she's very much in the Solarian, you know, follows, and knowledge is everything to her, and curiosity. So she wants to learn everything, and I think what I'm leaning towards is she needs more applicable situations, like how to apply that knowledge that she has, to a situation with where she might have to fight something. She doesn't have as much of that experience yet.
Awesome. Yeah, and so you three, I think, are going to be fairly new to the crew. You probably don't have a lot of connections. Maybe Rose, maybe you and Tony's character came on board together. Cersei's character might have potentially, at minimal, run into Raps's or Liza's character, because she was brought on board normally by humans, not by the Council. One thing you all need to know about Quarians is Quarians are also highly looked down upon by the other races, maybe except for humans for the most part, because humans also have to fight against a lot of prejudice as well because they're new to the galaxy. But Quarians are always seen as like thieves because their pilgrimage obviously takes them on journeys where they're trying to bring stuff back to their fleet. So it's one that, it might not be true, but it's the way it's perceived kind of thing. So Quarians have an uphill battle too. So Cersei's character will also be in that boat with our two human characters, who are going to be played by Liz and Raps, who are part of, and also a special forces unit called N7, which N's does stand for Special Forces, and then 7 is, that number indicates their proficiencies. It does scale from N1 to N7, and they are part of the N7. So basically what N1 represents is basic special operations training. N4 through N6 represents advanced tactics, leadership, and field specialization. And N7 means that they're elite operatives, and they're hand-picked, battle-proven, and entrusted with critical missions. And you guys are on board the Normandy, an experimental ship with a stealth drive. You can see why they're on board. To reach N7, just to kind of put it in perspective for Liz, since he's in the channel, they are incredibly rare. N7 units are the creme of the crop. They're the best of the best. They don't only have to complete every stage of their training, but they also have to demonstrate exceptional judgment, adaptability, and the ability to lead under extreme pressure. So a lot of them do wash out before they even reach that final tier. It's a very high pressured, high stakes kind of role, and they are definitely like those you go to when you need a job done. It's not to get a job done, it's when you need a job done. And fun fact, they do train at a place called John Grimson Academy, which is actually located within South America. So that's cool. But yeah, they're cool. Have you put any thought into your character there yet, Liz, being an N7 operative?
I have a few things. His codename is Shockwave, so I think that might say a lot. His backpack is also full of explosives.
Oh God. Yeah, and you and Raps decided the COXO thing, right?
Yeah, he's gonna be the XO. I'm gonna be the troublemaker.
Cool. So you're technically going to be second in command, basically, of the operation when and if Captain Anderson steps down. So that's gonna be cool. And you get to introduce the whole human hierarchy to your alien comrades, which will be fun because Cersei's character is more or less like a observer. She's like a collaborator with your engineer team. So she's not technically part of the chain of command, but she is there to offer advice, provide input, and to also aid your engineering corps. So. And then Rose and Tony's character are more or less observers, but they've been instructed to follow, at least at the moment, the commands of Captain Anderson.
Basically a stowaway, and also they're going to look at me and be like, what you get your grimy little hands on today?
Yeah, Captain Anderson will probably be one of those that you can go to, Cersei, that won't look down upon you just because you're a Quarian. Obviously, he saw the worth in you, so that's why you're on board the Normandy. So that's good. At least you'll have someone there that won't go, ew, a dirty Quarian in my system? What's going on here?
Oh my God. She'd just be like, dirty? My suit is very clean. Very clean.
It's going to be fun, too, because unlike Star Wars, right, where we all know Star Wars, whether it's through movies and stuff, or we know the extended universe pretty well. In this universe, you guys probably aren't expected to know anything. But yet you know a lot, because humans' history that's already played out. So like World War II and all that stuff, that existed still in Mass Effect's universe. It's just you're so far in the future that it's like an afterthought. So humanity at its core is still humanity. Nothing changed about that. So that's something to consider. And it is cool that you guys are starting on the maiden voyage of those first ships that are kind of going out there into the greater galaxy. Humans have probably been known to the greater galaxy for anywhere from 70 to 80 years at this point. So you're fairly new to that stage. But it'll be fun. Is there any excitement for it, for the going into 5e, or any reservations that you still have that you feel will probably just get worked out if you once you play?
I'm definitely excited to start a new character and to get to know everyone else's character in this new universe. Also looking forward to feeling more comfortable with the 5e system, which, yeah, I think as we use it, it'll make more sense.
Probably helped too that Star Wars Edge of the Empire, even though it wasn't 5e, don't get me, I'm not saying it's apples to apples, but there were similarities, at least at minimal, between the two. Like you still had to do the whole leveling up process. You still had to choose abilities. Obviously, you're not spending XP. You're going to follow this chart in 5e of what you can upgrade to. But there were still somewhat similarities between the two. The dice obviously weren't similar. You'll be using just standard array dice. D20, D10s, D4s, all those all those things. And you will have hard numbers that you'll have to roll, so there's no more success or failure rolls. But you guys still, it's like you've experienced it a little bit with your Edge of Empires, at least to the point where it's like you still had turn orders, right? You're still used to the initiatives, but this time your initiative will be specific to you instead of like this is a player slot. Now it'll be a Rose slot or a Lies slot or a Cersei slot. This will be like, this is where you are in the turn order, and there might be an enemy after you, not a player. Whereas in our Star Wars Edge of the Empire, it might have been player slot, enemy slot. But you guys got to choose who went. It's a little different that way. Obviously, your stats are going to play a bigger part in D&D, but they did still play a part in your Edge of the Empire. They kind of determined what your dice pool were, how many yellow and green dice that you got, or things like that. So that's still similar. And because we're doing Daggerheart with battle maps now, you're going to get used to battle maps. Like battle maps are going to be a bigger thing in D&D 5e. So basically, if you can move 30 feet, right, you can move up to 5 squares. You can double that by dashing, and you'll see these things at play, and they'll make sense as we do them. So I guess what I'm ultimately saying is, just like our Star Wars Edge of the Empire, when you guys are first starting that system, don't get overwhelmed, because we're going to do these things step by step anyways. And once you get into combat, our first couple combat encounters are going to be slow, because you guys have bonus actions, you have actions, and you have movements. And then you have reactions. And these are things that you'll just get used to doing. But at first, it's going to take a moment. And that's okay. I think it's been so long with our Star Wars system that we forgot even that took us a moment to get used to, right? So I think you guys will be great. I think you'll actually have a lot of fun.
Yep, looking forward to it.
Well, I will, unless any of you have any final statements, I will wrap up the stream. And we'll go from there.
Nope, nothing more from me.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, then tomorrow we do have our Daggerheart campaign that will be at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be venturing finally, potentially, maybe, towards the town of Brindlebrook. And we will be joined with Geller at that point, who is our Dwarven companion. And then next Saturday, we will do another Tomorrow Talk. Not sure what the subjects will be then. It might be to talk about our Daggerheart campaign, or we might maybe do a little gaming together. Who knows? We'll figure that out as a group. But that following Sunday will be our first session of Mass Effect. Thank you guys for joining me today, and I will see y'all tomorrow, or after the stream in another Discord.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Goodbye.